Oh no! I did a bad job. Hold on, we're just going to go straight into the three of us and it'll look better. Hello, everybody. I lied, Karma. You can be on voice. How's everybody doing? Welcome to the Ham and Hammy show. Um, Please forgive my
Hi.
technical glitch for a moment where I sliced ham. Perfect. Thank you, Clevie, in the chat. Uh,
You sliced me perfectly. I'm not even a Gemini. Like that's
well, it's not even
good
Gemini
job.
season, but that was a very
I
like zodiac queer thing of you to say. I like it. What's your
I do
astrological
my
sign?
I do my best.
Um,
Um,
so I will throw it to Ham to do the important pre-show read.
Ahem. Welcome to actually it's the Ham and Hammy Show. For information about all of our upcoming events, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Gotham Derby, Twitter at Gotham Derby, and by searching for us on Facebook. You can also find out about our events on our website, www.gothamgirlsrollerderby.com. Gotham strives to create a safe space for our participants, community, and fans, and that extends to our virtual events. We have a zero tolerance policy for any harassment, discrimination, bullying, hate speech, or abuse. Be cool and keep the chat thoughtful. And our mods are always ready to ban people. In fact, we kind of like it.
It's fun.
So it's very empowering. So now that all that is out of the way, let's get on with the show.
So, we have a very cool episode today where we're going to do some deep diving into body diversity. I know we had kind of advertised a few extra people, but as life happens and people maybe dropped out, that is okay. We have our amazing chat. We have the incredible Karma San Diego, who is one of our esteemed cheerleaders. And you're the Bronx captain, right?
I'm the Bronx co-captain with
Co-captain,
Levy in the
the
chat.
the the
Nice.
cheerleader, the Bronx cheerleader co-captain, along with Clevie. Fantastic. And we'll have Mac joining us as well a little later once their class lets out. So we have some really interesting conversation here about bodies and our sport. This conversation kind of started from something we'd been talking about on my other streaming blog about called Big Time, which is about fat people in pop culture specifically. And we ended up, of course, talking about roller derby a lot and realized that this is actually a better forum for it, is talking about body diversity in our sport at the roller derby themed show. So we didn't have to stop and go, oh, so roller derby is, which was like a moment where we were like bitching about 27.5 and then had to go, oh, wait, but roller derby is a sport. So really, really happy to see everyone here in the chat. Please
Absolutely.
like, again, this is an important show where we talk, I think it's important we point out that like, yeah, wait, so who has the ball? Yes, thank you, Bullshit Quick from the chat. I think it's important we are talking about all kinds of body diversity in this episode. We're not just talking about big bodies or small bodies, which is also part of our sport, right? Like one of the things that led me to roller derby was that I could see myself in the players. That there are different bodies, and that is one of the things that we like espouse as a sport as being so special about roller derby is that anyone can play and there's a part for everybody and a place for everyone. And I think that that's an interesting conversation to have, and a bigger conversation to have. Karma, what led you to roller derby? I know, and cheerleading as a whole.
Yeah. So I should say that I cannot skate to save my life. I can't do it. I've tried. Maybe I'll try again at some future point when we're not in tiny boxes. Um, but a friend of mine had an extra couple of tickets to about several years ago and was like, "Hey, do you want to do this like fun thing that you don't know anything about?" And I was like, "Totally." And it's when I saw who was playing, I was like so mesmerized by just the incredible athleticism and also just the joyful spirit that was on the track. And when I was like, I could do this, except not the skating part. So what could I do? And I saw the cheerleaders who were there, and I was like, I grew up like a competitive dancer, and I was like, I could do that. That's totally my speed. So yeah, it's just been super fun. I mean, it's COVID, so it's not a real season, but in theory, this would be like my 7th season cheering.
Oh,
So I've been
wow.
doing it for a while. And it's just really fun to like, I don't know, engage the audience and cheer people on from the track. And yeah,
Absolutely. Plus, I know I'm always really inspired when I watch the cheerleaders dancing and cheering because Ham, who has experience as a cheerleader, whereas I had
Yeah.
no sports in my high school. So it's something that I find really exciting.
Yeah, I'm like roller derby is great, but also cheerleaders, amazing. So it's kind of like I want to be them all. It's I did want to add that before the show came on, we were talking to Carmen. We're like, oh, this not it's like what, your third, fourth time on the show? The answer is this is Carmen's first time on the show, but we've been in so many Zoom meetings together about the league and like making the league awesome that it's very familiar to see you in a tiny box. But can't
Plus,
wait to
she's
see you
always in the
perform in
chat.
person.
So it's like
Yeah,
for long time listener, first time caller, Carmen San Diego.
right. Yeah, like we hang out all the time, don't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I honestly had assumed that you just were on all of the time, which is just me being broken. We've had this show for so long. Hold on, let me open my can of wine.
Can of wine.
I
I'm drinking beer from a
carbonated
tumbler.
wine. Hi, I'm a classy bitch.
I have a tumbler that has the name of my other streaming show, Wine and
Wait, I'm
Dynasty.
sorry.
So
You got Wine and Dynasty tumblers? Where's mine?
I've got merch. I've got merch. So
We need.
if you
Oh,
guys
that is.
haven't gotten enough ham, you can join me every other Wednesday
This
at
is
the Pop Culture Co-op
foul.
with Snark Tank as we watch Dynasty and Daydream. So you're welcome to join us.
It's actually one. I say this like it's a surprise and it's not, but it's actually like one of the most entertaining things I've ever watched.
Well, thank you.
This is foul. I shouldn't say that because I feel like, maybe Rose Bubbles from Mendocino County wanted to sponsor us, and I just went, oh, you're disgusting. Uh, but oof, I'm going to drink it, but it is disgusting. I
It's
wonder if it
open.
would
You
be
gotta
better
drink it.
inside of a slushie.
You gotta
Anyway,
drink it.
we might be doing some work here. Anyway, so back to our topic, something that has been a big deal, at least something, and I'm gonna throw it out to Snark Tank and Margaret Thrasher, who was having this conversation with me previously that we were saying was something about roller derby's body diversity that has been so interesting is in the beginning, and I've been playing for almost 10 years. So, yes, my Singani is really strong. To the chat who's asking where my sponsor, Singani 63, is, I do have a bottle. It is really good, and it's a Tuesday night. Like, I have to be able to speak. It is such a strong alcohol. I would not, I'd be setting myself up to be a fool. But one of the big things that we were talking about on Big Time, which plug to that every other Friday, we were doing our talk about fat athletics and fat athletes. And roller derby 10 years ago when I started playing is a lot different than roller derby now, not just in terms of rule sets, but also in terms of what we look for and what we're seeing in terms of skaters on the track. And I don't mean this necessarily just in terms of weight, although that is a huge disparity we're seeing. But the diversity of bodies is definitely less and less as it becomes more and more competitive. And not because we necessarily are less athletic or less strong, but because we are visibly people have a lot of misconceptions about what our bodies can do and can handle on top of like in a strong athletic range. I think that happens also with age. Although the age of roller derby is going up because a lot of skaters are getting older who are skating, which is like one of the cooler parts of the sport. You're starting to see these younger people. You're starting to see less and less of these big changes and big things because everyone wants to be so competitive, and in their heads that means younger and faster and thinner and fitter. Bonnie Thunders does not age, as the chat is saying. Absolutely not. Neither does Susie Hot Rod. I always make a joke that the day you start roller derby is the day you stop aging.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. I mean, I think that my approach, I don't know. I would say until I started playing roller derby like 7 years ago, I actually didn't consider myself to be athletic, which is strange because I was a cheerleader through high school. I played basketball. I ran track in college. But if anyone was like, "Are you athletic?" I'd have been like, "No, not really." And then I found myself in roller derby really thinking about like the actual fear of like calling myself, like using that label on myself. And I think we need to reframe as like, what does it mean to be athletic? For me at this point, to be athletic means you play sports. Yeah. Like you do athletics. That's all it takes. And I really didn't see that way until I started playing roller derby with so many different people from all different backgrounds, like dancers or power lifters or just people from a wide array of experiences that come together to play the sport.
And something that I think is really special also about our cheerleaders is the body diversity that is there. Something that like I don't think I could ever. There's a reason I wasn't a cheerleader, and it was something that it didn't look like it was for me. Mm-hmm. So there's something really special about seeing all of these different bodies and different heights. And I mean, hell, I always thought it would be cool to be a Rockette, but I am not even 5 feet tall. So even just the fact that I'm short kept me from that, which, I think you have to be 5'8". So there's a wide age. Oh, as Clevie is saying in the chat, there's a wide age diversity. There's body diversity. I just think it's something that's really special and worth pointing out. And Karma, you've been around a long time. So like, are you seeing these changes as well as skaters on the track? Are you noticing anything like that?
With incoming cheerleaders, I think actually no. We're seeing continued diversity in many respects, and I think part of that is because we're not the people skating, right? So that doesn't mean that there aren't skaters who also cheer. I should clarify that, but it's a group where people are interested in it if they're not currently skating with the league, right? Like that's a way that they can get involved without skates. And so I think it just, in some ways, inherently, at least in your mind, at least in my mind, I'll say in my mind, makes it feel more accessible certainly for somebody like me who just has like really flat feet and can't skate at all. And I think for a lot of people who felt like either they were a cheerleader or they wanted to cheerlead or they wanted to dance or they just really enjoy like shaking their pom-poms and getting people excited.
Y'all do stunts too though. Like, yeah, definitely the stunts. I love it when you guys do stunts. It makes me so happy and it makes me want to like cast away my skates and be a cheer.
We have Mac on now too.
Hey.
And my tech worked, so 10 points. I'm so excited.
Did it? Was it seamless?
It was seamless. Well, we could
fantastic.
the chat can let us know if it was seamless, but it felt very seamless to me.
It is the most supportive chat on earth, so they're going to tell you that it was perfect.
That's true. We probably have the best chat that exists in all of Twitch. So yeah, welcome Mac. For those who don't know, the Smacktivist is... Yeah, this is a very Bronx-heavy show, which I love.
My pals.
Max skates for Bronx on our All-Stars and is just an all-around amazing, amazing skater. We've been talking about body diversity. One of the big points we just made, aside from the cheerleaders being fucking awesome. Oop, there goes one.
There's one. There's
one
only
of the
one
F-bombs
left. Noted.
Oh, I thought I was doing so good. Was that the idea of bodies adjusting in terms of like competitive play from when I started even 10 years ago to now being a lot more body diverse as something that like brought me in to see all this different body types at high level play. But like as years have gone on and things have gotten more and more competitive, that seems to be less and less there, at least from like my standpoint. And I know like Thrasher has noticed that as well, is it's this idea and maybe misconception of like what fitness is. Also the chat has let us know.
Jew leader, I love it. That's the person who leads the Passover Seder. That's what that means.
our auto captioner, which is an amazing thing because it does this for free and live as we're talking, thinks cheerleader is Jew-leader, but I also wonder if it's just that I'm talking too fast.
I think that the captioner, it's like props to, like, big ups to the rabbis out there. Like,
As a professional Jew and a cheerleader, I really appreciate that. So this is great. And
You're a professional
oh,
Jew?
that's fantastic.
That's great. So that was something, I don't know, Mac, if that's something that you've noticed. You've been around longer than I have in like competitive play. Yeah, just like different bodies, like the like diversity of bodies becoming less and less as we've gotten more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been around the sport since like 2011, I guess, and like I could definitely see probably a broader range of different types of bodies then, and especially at like a slightly lower level of skating. But definitely when I look at, you know, the top 10 WIFTDA teams, I'm looking at certain types of bodies. I mean, that's very clear. Not only is the group incredibly white, but also usually like sort of like maybe built a little bit, but there definitely aren't like very large or necessarily like fat bodies. There are some, but they are outliers, certainly. And even smaller folks, you'll see smaller folks, but those folks do tend to sometimes, I think, struggle at a higher competitive level as well. I think too, I mean, like there's almost this piece too where, and again, this is just my assessment, but I think too, like where we've seen a moving away from the campiness of the sport and towards this like much more like uniformed competitiveness. I've noticed that shift also reflecting, you know, like a change in bodies a little bit, despite like there being more of a dialogue about body diversity now, I feel like, but than there was back then, or maybe it was more of a given back then, again, at least in my experience. But yeah, I feel like that's true for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So something I really like talking about is how our bodies are different and how that makes us special. I love to focus on the things about our bodies that are great. Because sure, like we put a lot of focus on the things that can hold us back, but I think that also our diversity of bodies is what brings us forward and gives us something. And Ham, like I know you're maybe a little older than some skaters, and that is something she pointed out. I'm not just calling Ham old.
No. That's right. Auntie Ham is here to say.
Please do not call me out in the chat.
No, it's cool. You know, I do feel as, you know, I turned 40 last summer. So I feel pressure to work out hard. I think to myself, oh, I have to. Thank you so much, Bolshe. But I do feel like I need to work out harder. Like, I'm like, all right, so now that vaccines are coming in and like it's looking like we will play eventually one day, I'm like, all right, so I need to get a chiropractor, and then I need to start lifting weights, and then I need to be like riding my exercise bike like every day. I feel a lot of pressure to be conditioned in a certain way, and that like, oh, I need to build muscle, and maybe I should just start, you know, eating chicken breast all the time. Like, so yeah, there's a pressure with that, just to be able to the feeling of being able to keep up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the pressure's there.
So Karma, in terms of your body, what are things that you think are, or not think, but what are the things that you enjoy and feel make you stand out or special or work in your favor?
Ooh, I was muted.
It's just like every other Zoom chat, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I am probably the largest person in the broader community, which is just true. And I think that in some ways it's actually really great. I think that there's value in the audience, certainly in seeing different bodies, even if I'm not skating, then, you know, like if I'm cheering, like people get excited, and I know that people in the audience have talked to me about it. And it's really nice to feel like people see themselves people see themselves in whoever's on the track, but that's not always in skaters, right? So that could be in managers, that could be in refs, that could be in gear, that could be whoever. And I think that that's it's really nice. It's really nice in a way that I was not expecting. I will say that. And it's not as nice in my regularly scheduled life in terms of how people treat me, but it's very nice at Gotham.
Yeah. And Mac, did you tell us what makes you special? Although I feel like I can, about all of you, gush on and on about this.
Tough one for me to answer. Not because there are like so many answers, but because I have trouble coming up with them. I mean, like I have such a tenuous relationship with my body, I think. And I think my initial answer that came to mind was I'm a shapeshifter.
You are. It's great.
Because like I mean, the reason that I even really was like, I'll put my hat in the ring for this show was one, because I love an excuse to see Ham and Hammy, my pal, and two, because I was like, for me, like my how I look physically changed a lot throughout my experience in women's flat track roller derby, and I started taking steps in a direction that I knew would make me an outlier in that space, and potentially even like put me in a position where I'm being ostracized or uninvited. And similarly, I felt at times in the derby world like my value comes from my level of skill as a skater, not as all of the other things that I am. And that makes it feel difficult to show up authentically as well, and also like perpetuates this difficult relationship I have with my body, because like I'm not always going to be like a super high level skater. I can't sustain it. That level of fitness like doesn't exist forever. I have tremendous amounts of chronic pain right now, and probably will into the future. And if my value like lies in being able to perform in a certain way, then like where is that value when I can't do that anymore? And so that's been like a huge piece that I've had to grapple with, especially as some of this like pain and some health issues have come up for me, and in just like not even being able to skate anymore. And certainly there's like a lot of privilege that comes with everything that I'm saying right now, which I do want to acknowledge. And like my relationship with my body is such that it's difficult for me to come up with like reasons that it's good, or like strengths that I feel that I have, beyond my ability to perform repetitive tasks and motions.
You're an incredible coach.
I was about to say, I don't know if I've ever been coached in a way where things have made sense the way that you coach.
Thank you.
I once asked you for some tips about hockey stops, and your eyes lit up. Like, I mean, it was just like, I mean, no, like really that the interest that you took in me in that moment, asking that question, it meant a lot, because it wasn't like, I have to give someone these tips. Like your eyes said like, I love teaching people, and I'm happy that you asked me. And it was just like a small moment, like in the practice space. But yeah, you're an incredible coach.
That is, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I love coaching. I love opportunities to learn. I feel like I learn when I teach, and I feel like it's just another opportunity for me, and it's an opportunity for someone else, and we get to come together on something that we're both excited about and interested in, and like that's great. I love it, and thank you for asking me that question, because I'm sure it made my night that much better, or my day that much better. Yeah, thank you.
I think that your point about chronic illness is chronic pain is a big point too when we talk about body diversity. There's a lot of support groups for chronic pain and chronic illness and derby players. And as someone who also deals with chronic illness, I have fibromyalgia, and I'm fat, which isn't a chronic illness, but it is the things that make me stand out in terms of derby. And when I was talking to Thrasher about this, when she started asking this question about like, rather than focusing necessarily on what is hard, asking that question about like what's great about what's making you different, completely, like I cried the first time she said it. Like my whole brain changed a little. So like it's one of those things I like to take that time and really like, how does that make, and for me, I think the fact that, and from like a personal standpoint, like my struggle to get good at roller derby, like it took me so long to pass skills. It took me 1.5 years to just get my like laps and skill sets. I wasn't conditioned. I was in so much pain, like the amount of pain, my first, like still when I play and have fatigue and issues and I have to work through, people don't see the like recovery time of their chronically ill skaters. Like on the track, you don't see it, but then, you know, where you might bounce back by the next morning, like that's when I spend 2 days in baths and icing and doing all these things to be able, and stretching to be able to keep performing at a high level. So I think that that's like a super important piece that we talk, like when we talk about body diversity, but I also think that that's a special thing because the time it's taken me to learn each skill, the amount of repetition, and the struggle it's taken me to learn how to take care of my body to keep doing it means that I know how to learn something new. And I think sometimes for people who are able to just step into something and it comes easily, I think that's amazing and that's a really cool superpower and like power to them. But when they do hit a wall of not knowing how to do a skill or having a problem, they have to overcome this extra obstacle, which is learning how to learn. You know, like learning how to train their body to learn how to learn something new because they haven't had to do that yet. So I think that to me, in terms of like my body not taking to roller derby naturally or even any skill set is something I've taken into my real life when something is hard. Is that like now I know how to learn. I know how to break a skill down. I know how to like figure out how to make my movements, because lateral motion, let me tell you, lateral movements are not my friend. And I spent years having to break that down to be able to move side to side on the track. I'm all right at it now.
Well, and I do appreciate that question so much too, around like kind of what's your strength, like what's the thing that is good, you know, about being different. And because I don't think that we're not asked that question enough, you know, like that is not something that is focused on, especially at Derby. It's like, what are the things you're doing wrong? Like, you know, like how do you still have to grow, you know? And like, yeah, we're celebrating those good moments and stuff, but like when we're talking about like bodies, and certainly like in media, it's everywhere, right? Like we're not asked that question. We often are just focusing on like, what's wrong with you that you're different? So I just appreciate the question.
Yay.
Good one.
Well,
Yeah.
shout out to Margaret Thrasher, who is sad that she's not able to join us tonight because this is her favorite topic. So one of the other things that we wanted to chat about a little bit is also like who inspires you on the track. One of the things I was taught early on when I was trying to learn how to skate was to look at skaters like me and emulate them. And that didn't really work because there just wasn't a whole heck of a lot of them. There were some who were similar, you know, had similar body types or were short, but nobody that looked just like me. But I definitely had people who inspired me on the track because they were larger or just their skill set hit a certain point that I was really excited to watch. So I would love to hear, and like Karma as well, like other cheerleaders or other skaters or anybody really, it doesn't even have to be in the Derby community, who you're looking at right now and is inspiring you, so that we can send people their way so they can get inspired as well. The big think. And the chat.
I can jump in and say like the cheerleaders themselves, like all of the cheers inspired me, because being at About and seeing the cheerleaders, it really, like, y'all have so much fun. And I feel like even though, like, you know, you think everyone's like looking at you when you're in a place, but like really no one's looking at you. But like with cheerleaders, everyone's looking at you and everyone thinks you're awesome. And I kind of wish I could have that ability to tap into joy that the way that the cheers do. It's just, I don't know. It just sounds so, I don't care if it sounds silly, but yeah, I like tear up during halftime. I'm like, I wish that could be me. But yeah, I just like people being joyful, like unapologetically joyful. And it's super cool to me. And then I like immediately start thinking about how I want to throw one of y'all in the air. Cause you know, cheerleading, like I'm like, who wants to do a basket toss? Let's do it. So yeah.
That's so nice of you to say. And even lovelier that's true. I was going to say that I'm inspired personally by watching all of you. And I mean, I've certainly seen all three of you skate, and you're all fantastic. And I think I'm certainly inspired by the other Gers and by really everybody. I think actually one of the benefits to me of being a cheerleader is that you have to come early, right? You have to see setup, breakdown, like through breakdown for about, you see everything. And so you actually get to see and witness all of the work that goes into making it possible. And I think just even seeing that is really special. And I mean, all of you are so incredible. I don't even know that I have like individuals, honestly. I'm just like and you can see this, I think, when like, I mean, people really don't look at us when we're on the track during games. But like, if you ever look at me, I'm like, yeah, this person, and yeah, this person, and yeah, this person. And it's because like everyone is just doing so well to move together as a team. And it's just really cool to watch and cheer on.
Oh, I love this. I know, like, for me, something that made a big difference was when I started seeing, like, Lo Betancourt skate, who I don't know anything about as a human. I'm sure she's lovely, but I remember watching her and just getting so excited to see different bodies than what I was used to be just super successful. And also successful, like, on posters and, like, visible in their league, which I thought was really cool because oftentimes that's not the case. It's really hard to find like league images that include larger bodies or different bodies, especially like on their poster art. So it was cool when I started getting to see that. It's actually like a big conversation that was had on the Derby internets not too long ago, maybe a few years, but pre-COVID, but like where they were talking about how difficult it is to find Derby photographers getting pictures of different bodies. And also blockers in general. Like, we don't look as cool. There's not a lot of, like, really good, like, jammer action shot. Like, there's great jammer action shots. There's not as many, like, great blocker. I always look kind of like this when I, like, and I get it because a lot of the pictures of me when I'm blocking are, like, because I'm, like, mid doing something or, like, falling. Like, it's, like, all of my bones are in a weird position. It's, like, a whole moment. So it's not necessarily cinematic. Mac, do you have anybody that you look up to a lot when you're skating or inspired you?
So I feel like people are going to hate this answer, that both prongs of this answer, people are going to hate them. But like, I have this whole thing where like, I can't watch roller derby. I can just play it. Like, I don't want to say I don't enjoy watching other people, but it's like, then I'm just going to get in this whole comparison game where I'm like putting myself up against other jammers and it just gets in my head. That's not helpful. So I just focus on my game. I don't really watch other people, try not to put other people up on pedestals as much as I can. However, the other prong of this is just like trans skaters, like people who are like visible and out there who over time, especially since 2011, have been pushing WIFTDA to like get on board with like allowing non-binary skaters and also like deal with the fact that non-binary skaters like look a lot of different ways, and certainly also like pushing to find space for like trans women. And I remember like, you know, the two big names for me from 2011 on were like B Diva, because like I'm also Ohio, but like we skated, you know, against Philly and stuff, and then Dr. Juniper Simonis, so Junie. Those were two folks that for me just represented like this very raw and sense of like confidence and willingness to just like show up and put themselves out there, and of course are incredible skaters. And I think like definitely folks like that really emboldened me to feel like I could start, you know, like hormone replacement therapy, that I could start looking a different way in the sport without losing my place. Because I definitely don't want to play Murda. That's all I gotta say about that.
The faces we all just made. I don't know what you mean. Everything's great.
No, I mean, I just stopped talking.
So I think, you know, and on that note, like, I think it's important that we also like kind of talk about what we can be doing better, because there's obviously like a lot of room. in a million and a half ways. I mean, there's a lot of conversation right now happening in terms of othering in the WFTDA space on the Derby Twitter. Shout out Derby Twitter. There's a lot of big conversations happening there, and I'm not on Facebook, but I imagine it's also heavy on Facebook. Facebook is for my parents' friends and my family. It's why I'm still there. And to look at old Derby pictures of myself and be like, look at how hot I am. Lots of pictures of me that one time I jammed per game. But I think it's important we have the conversation about like what we can be doing better, where we see room for improvement. Like I said, like I think that there is a big conversation about like we do a lot of praising of our ability to be inclusive, and that includes, and body diversity is part of that, I think, as much as everything, like maybe not as much as other issues, but is part of the conversation that we're having. Is like when I started Derby, it was like it's for all bodies and it's for all people and it's for everyone. And like I think that is a beautiful idea that has a lot of work. It needs to actually be there. And I think that there's a lot of changes we have to make, even just if I'm just speaking from my personal experience from like a more, my dad, Facebook for sold farts. If anybody wonders who Papa Hammy is, big guess. But I think that there's this conversation about like, what is the goal of your sport in terms of allowing people who are differently abled or have chronic pain, if it's just to win titles, that's a conversation, right? Like these are all things that we need to start talking about and addressing in terms of like, what are our goals and what are we doing this for? And also like, how do we look at bodies that are different than us in terms of their ability to be successful?
Well, I think redefining what success is in terms of just starting with the minimum skills. That was a really good start.
That was a huge change.
I think, I've been playing or skating for, I think 6 years, and I've been able to do a 27.5 once. And it hurt. So I think looking at things like that and saying like, is this, I think that was, the push to be like, we want people to take roller derby super seriously. So we have to be we have to be conditioned in a certain way. And I think moving away from that has been really, it's a good start. I think there's more to be done, but I think that it's a good start.
Yeah, I was really happy with the exclusion. And for those who are not derby people, I think most of you are, that it is a derby show. The fact that the WFDDA took away the minimum skills guidelines and are letting leagues kind of lead that conversation themselves makes so much more sense. I feel like Gotham kind of was already doing that to a certain extent, but most leagues that I have been part of have taken those minimum skills extremely specifically. And for the chat, I started roller derby in 2012 and I had to do 25.5. So those minimum skills have existed for a good chunk. But again, I don't know how much Gotham did them in the way that other leagues did them. Especially, Oh, go for it.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, so when I first started playing roller derby, I was in Beijing, China. And so I was also the head coach. So because, our founders left and they were like, all right, well, you got to whistle. So I became the coach, and most of the things I did with the team were things that I learned from watching YouTube. I watched a lot of YouTube. And I do remember seeing the wider range of bodies narrow down, and especially on specific teams. And they were the teams that were climbing to the top. One team, in fact, I was like, oh, wow. Has everyone in this team become a CrossFitter? Has everyone in this team started just lifting weights every day? Because it was the same players, and there's nothing wrong with everyone, deciding this is something we want to do together, but it was a marked change. And I was questioning. I was like, is this the direction that things are going in? And I think that, like you said, for when you're deciding, do we want to be a team that just wins all the time? Is that what has to happen? Or how else do we reframe that? I think for leagues, they have to decide like, what do we want to do? Do we want to lift people up and include as many people as possible? But also, do we want to win, and how do you put those goals together?
And I mean, we have entire committees about this, so I don't think that we're going to find answers in our 1 hour talk show where I'm drinking terrible bubble wine. But I think that these are great conversations. We're not going to solve the world's problems on the Ham and Hammy show, although maybe we are. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth having and starting these conversations or these thoughts as we go through, especially now while we're on an extended off season. I feel like it's a really
I'm thankful for this off season. I think it is the rest that a lot of people's bodies needed.
Yeah, we found out I had a herniated disc that I just didn't even know about because I was in so much pain from roller derby. I went to the doctor and I was like, is it because of my chair? And he's like, you've probably had this for years.
Oh dear.
Roller derby. But I
Oh, well, you're go ahead.
No, you go.
I was gonna say you're both also speaking to this culture too, right? Of like winning comes before everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like
Yes.
being good comes before everything else, including like our full humanity, our lack of pain. And I mean, look, I have so much to say about this, so much, because I've thought about it so much over the last almost, I guess it's a decade now. It's been a decade now. Congratulations to me. And, I think like largely it just always for me comes back around to like white organizational culture. Like it just always does, because that is the thing that perpetuates ableism. That is the thing that perpetuates like trans misogyny. Like that is a thing that perpetuates like patriarchal assumptions, and like ableism is like so rampant in most sports. But even the progression that we see from where derby started as this just sort of ragtag collection of folks locally that were somehow trying to create networks more nationally and globally, which again it's not a bad thing necessarily, but along with that came this drive for competition. And then this idea that is everyone on that team just doing nothing else besides playing roller derby? Like, is that how they got this good? And then you start to get into these cultures where there isn't room for other parts of who you are. And there's a cost that no matter what level you're at, right? There's a cost for me as someone who skates at a competitive level that it's like, I couldn't have relationships. I didn't do anything besides work and play roller derby. And that was just to sustain this incredibly competitive level of play, which for me was because this is how I get my sense of self-worth. So like, what else am I going to do? Which like for better or worse, whatever, and like competitive sports mean a lot to me and playing means a lot to me. But I think these things are also, it's like all these pieces that you're naming, right? About allowing for localized decision-making. Like that is like something that we talk about in like disability justice circles, is like not having like global solutions to problems that affect different communities in different ways or different groups of people in different ways. And so for WIFTA to say, yeah, cool, you decide as a league, is like this way of sort of dismantling that type of like cultural piece and saying like, yeah, okay, like let's allow for localized solutions and allow leagues to make their own decisions. And then the question does become, right, how do we all come together and still maybe celebrate competition and have competition, and maybe that is still a part of it, while broadening and expanding our idea of like what is possible and who we want to include and who the sport is actually for. Because I do think that has shifted a lot over the last decade. Who the sport is for has shifted a lot over the last decade. Definitely towards like folks who were ready to put their heads down, wear a jersey, be in a uniform, and away from the folks that are like, I just want to wear a skirt and like knock into my friends,
Yeah, I never got to wear a tutu. I'm really sad that I missed
I did.
That phase. Like, I want to wear a tutu.
And fishnets.
I wore fishnets a few times.
Yeah, like the crafter in me is like, I could make so many tutus. So yeah, I'm sorry that I missed out on that. But yeah, I do think that it's starting to be for a very specific person. And going back to Hammy's question about who was someone you looked up to, I like fangirled Blackjack, just because so in my other life, before I was doing roller derby, I was doing ballroom dancing. And I like have just fallen into like very white activities. And I was like, should I do like a different type of like a specific type of ballroom dancing that's more for like Black people? And then I started playing roller derby and I was like, should I be rhythm skating instead? Like, is this a place for me? And then I saw blackjack. And I remember I got their card, a trading card from one of their sponsors at RollerCon. And I was like, yes, I can do this. Like, there is room for me. And then hooking up with like the Black Roller Derby Network, like I was like, okay, this can be a place for me. But then there's also, but like the goalposts are moving. So in terms of like feeling like you have to be a certain type of person to do roller derby, I tried out with a torn rotator cuff. And so, and was like, because I was so scared that if I didn't like take that moment, like, oh, you can see my scars. There they are, right there.
Ooh.
My surgery scars. But I was afraid if I didn't try out then, where I felt like I was in peak condition, then I was never gonna have a chance. Which is kind of, not fun. It's not a fun feeling. But yeah, it was like skating scared that whole tryout period, and I almost talked myself out of it. And my partner was like, "Yo, you need to try out or stop talking about this." So I tried out, and yeah, he was like, you need to do it, just do it. And so I tried out, and had like resigned myself to thinking like, oh, I'm going to be the lowest ranked person at, in the league because I'm sidelined right now with an injury, and like having some kind of feelings about that. So
it also leads a lot of people to skate injured.
Yeah.
I mean, as like I said, as somebody with fibromyalgia, there's been many a time when I skate while having a flare up.
Yeah.
Which, sure, not great. Not my best moment. I can usually make it through a practice, but it means I'm taking a car home and getting in the shower, like getting in a bath, and it's not fun. Those are also usually the practices where I get like where people are like, your head's not in it, and I'm like, I'm fully aware. My head is not in fact in it. I am just trying to keep my legs moving and not fall asleep on the side at 8:00 at night on a Tuesday, right? So I think that and I will say, like, I'm very lucky because my home team kind of knew about this, and we had people on the team who also had experiences with it, and they were extremely like, hey, like, let's sit down for a little while. Like, you're fine. Nobody's looking at you different if you take a second. And like, I got really, really lucky to have a home team that was super supportive. But I also know that I hide a lot of that. Like, there's a privilege of me being able to hide a lot of my like invisible pain and take and push through until I get home.
Yeah.
Which is its own thing. I actually think I'd have a harder time. Like, listen, I know I would have a harder time being a cheerleader because y'all are throwing people up in the air. I'm so impressed. I love screaming. It looks so hard.
I was like, not me.
Just you wait. It's going to happen. Sarah Bell and I are always like, okay, so what stunts do you want to try? Like, if you just want to swing by a cheer practice. And I'm like, oh, I definitely want to come to a cheer practice. Like, I definitely do.
Ham, I want you to do like a cheer halftime on a game you're playing.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Like, I want you to skate, shove your skates off, jeer, and then go back and skate.
That would probably be my proudest derby moment. The ability to do that. I do think that, because of the pandemic and there's been a pause, people really have had an opportunity to reimagine so many parts of derby, whether looking at, membership and what that means in a league, or, what is the identity of a league. I think that because we have this time to have these conversations, it's important to seize on them. I mean, we're just one show, but this could be this could be the show forever. But I do also think it's worth bringing up at AB meetings, at league meetings. Let's talk about before, we put our skates on or before we get our palms out, like, who do we want to be? I think it's important to have those conversations. I know some people are disengaged because it's nice to disengage because roller derby can't eat your life. But I think now is the time to really like reconsider and reimagine and get a little radical. people have proposed some ideas to me that I never, like, I don't know. I was just so focused on myself and what I was trying to do, that things that like I hadn't imagined. Like, you're like, what if we're the team that, what if we're the league that, in order for any home team to be competitive in like the championships, they have to give equal playing time to every single person on their roster. What if we were that league that did that? You know, like,
That's amazing.
would that be such a bad thing? Yeah.
I love it.
That's such a great way for us to like look at the future, especially like, I know, but I have been guilty of, I've grown a lot in this area and my mind has changed a lot about things. So I think that one thing that we also tend to do is feel weird to admit when we've been wrong. And like, I was a proponent for 25-5. I was a proponent for like testing and skills, and I was like the one who was leading that charge when I was head of fresh meat at GSR and making sure that people had been skating for 3 months before they got a name, because people were coming and going. And, you know, there was all this gatekeeping that, sure, I learned it from other people, but that doesn't mean that I needed to perpetuate it. And so I hope that we have these conversations, and that when we look at them and we look at ourselves and where our brains have been stuck because of the people around us and the institutions around us, and that we can question our own minds and change them. Maybe that's just forever and with everyone, but we all get, you know, it's hard to admit when we're wrong and when we've made mistakes. And I certainly would say that I have been wrong and I have made mistakes, and I've been happy and pleased to be able to adjust my thinking as the world has been changing around me in terms of like roller derby and these conversations having. Again, I said that eloquently and then not eloquently at all.
The words join were the club. There. We've all been wrong a bunch of times.
I think we
it's
have.
Great to admit it, you know. It feels nice sometimes.
It's something nice to be like, oh yeah. I wear a tutu. I love wearing, like, I think one of the most fun things, I will say that's
first
the other
practice
nice thing.
Back. I'm doing it.
The nice thing about
I'll join you.
Please. Yes. I would say
but like compliance culture is real, you know what I mean? Like in derby leagues, I think there's such a culture of compliance, and like you get in line and you follow the rules and you don't question it. And if you do question it, it's a dumb idea. And you know, it's, sorry, I shouldn't have said dumb, but
say what you want.
Well, no.
Yeah, well, it's a little ableist, but trying to mind my language, but I've been saying stuff a long time. Anyway, yeah, I think like the compliance culture piece, right? Like I did it because other people around me were doing it, and that's what I thought I had to do, you know, to not be ostracized, to fit in with the league, to, you know, have easier relationships, to get the play time, to whatever it might be.
To move up
real.
To the next level.
Yeah.
Because listen, I am just as competitive as the next person. I love me some competition.
Want to fight?
Yeah. Don't put me. I will remember there was an ECDX. Want to fight? Got any threes? There was this like ECDX where they were having like camp themes. It was like a summer camp theme, and they did this thing where they had like game in the pool with like all the derby players, and it was like one of those like watermelons that they like lubed up, and you're supposed to like grab it and like bring it to the other side, but
I love that game.
Yeah, but like it was all roller derby players. It got so violent.
There were probably at least like a handful of concussions by the end of it.
It was literal bloody.
For sure.
It literally got bloody. Somebody had had put their foot in somebody else's mouth.
Oh no.
Like it got so like they were like roller derby rules because it got so aggressive. And I think that's also a really exciting part about roller derby is that oftentimes like we're not permitted to be that aggressive and that like competitive. So I also like as part of that conversation don't necessarily want to take that option away from people while we talk about this. So it's soup's complicated.
Were jeers at ECDX?
They've gone.
There may have been a couple.
Yeah, I think we need to normalize. Like when you travel, jeers come with you. That should just be given. Yeah, like that should be a given. But it needs to happen.
I mean, one of the highlights of making Gotham is knowing that you'll have jeers. That's like a real thing.
Makes
me,
you think of Minnesota's travel team cheerleading section, and I definitely want cheerleaders to like always come with to like tournaments and fun shit. Like,
It's just so
makes it so much
nice.
better. Those games are so fun. They have
Yeah,
a whole
absolutely.
cheerleading section, painting their bodies
Painting their
orange and
bodies.
teal. It's incredible.
This is fantastic.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I mean,
They heckle people. It's incredible.
I had the best day of my life, like when we went to Philly Champs and I was dressed as a giant bumblebee with a kazoo. That was a thing I did. Oh yeah. We all dressed as bumblebees and we had kazoos and we stood on the Diamond District, all like 10 or 12 of us. Like all stood there and just like kazooed because it's like bees. Get it? Like buzzing bees. We thought it was funny. I think we stole the idea, but I think we still enjoyed ourselves. There's definitely pictures.
Fantastic.
It comes up every once in a while. So as this show is nearing the end, I want to thank everybody for coming on and having what is not an easy conversation. I think it's a conversation will absolutely continue and should continue, and you should all, not to tell the viewers what to do, but the viewers at home should also be having these conversations about, especially for me, about what makes you being different, makes you special, and finding those positive, wonderful things that are different about you and what that means to you as an uplifting thing. Because it was really like therapy for me when I started going, oh, but like, here's why this is my superpower, right? But I also would like to let everyone kind of have a going away message or something that if they'd like people to take away. For me, like I said, it's think about you and what makes you different and how that makes you special and how that's your superpower and something that's great and has lent itself to something positive in your life. Because I assure you, and if you can't think of one, call me. Because I feel like, or chat me, I'm on all the socials and I will help you figure it out. Because I get it's hard and I'm here to help all of you figure out what makes you amazing. But if anybody else would like to chime in with something, a good takeaway or a conversation you'd like people to continue having, this is a chance. This is your soapbox.
I mean, I'll say that like all body minds are good body minds, and like we have to keep confronting and like unpacking ableism because it's everywhere. It's literally everywhere, and it also affects all of us. So I think like it's really important for us to really examine it and think about like how it shows up in our lives and how like internalized ableism shows up for us. How a lot of us push ourselves past like our limits, either because we think we have to, or we think we should, or we think people around us expect that of us. I think there's a lot of opportunities to like disrupt how it shows up in our lives and how it affects our ability to just like be very valid in who we are in our body minds every single day as they exist.
Absolutely. Karma, did you have anything you wanted to add as we near the end of the show?
Well, I appreciate hearing from all of you, and I especially appreciate a lot of the talk about comparing yourselves to other people, because I think that's something that we don't always talk about. Like anyone who's in public in any time in any capacity, but particularly in an athletic setting, right, where like everyone has their own internal sense of like who they may or may not be comparing themselves to, whether it's past or future themselves or somebody else. And I certainly have done it. Like I said, I've been dancing a long time and I still do it. And for that reason, actually, I usually don't watch the dance videos after the fact, in the same way that Matt can't watch her. It's the same thing to me.
I also can't watch.
It's hard, but it's a process. And I appreciate everyone's honesty because I think that will help bring that forward. I think it's an important thing to talk about.
Awesome. Ham, anything you'd like, any closing words?
I just want everyone to allow themselves to be joyful. It's okay. It'll feel good.
I love that. Well, I think
Eventually.
Eventually. At first, it might be a little awkward, but
it'll feel weird, but it'll be good eventually.
Like, imagine you're a Gotham Gear and like just, you know what, like leave it on the dance floor.
This is great. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll be on again next week, as we are almost every Tuesday.
Right.
And we
Don't know
have
what we're
been.
going to talk about, but we'll be here.
We'll be here. Sometimes it's just two of us shooting the shit, and those are fun too. But
That's
we
right.
really appreciate Mac and Karma joining us this week, and all of you in the chat. And let's chat some more. Tell us in the chat or via socials what you feel like makes you special, because I want to hear what everybody's taking away from it. Cool. Thanks, everybody. I'm
Bye.
gonna turn us off now.